The ability to survive off of medial supply is something that really makes the slaves stand out. They were given little to work with, but in the overrun, the foods that they came up with really kind of set the standard for Southern food and really for what American food is.
There are many things that we ate that our ancestors ate as slaves we are still eating today. The now generation that follows me, many of them do not know their history and they are unaware of why we eat what we eat.
African American cuisine, soul food, ultimately what became soul food. It's an evolution of lowbrow cooking. And lowbrow cooking is that you don't get first pick. You get second pick. But ultimately, what you have to do, you have to work harder for that to taste better. You have to use more vegetables. You have to use more seasoning.
So, okay, the first presentation is going to be about foods that were traditionally eaten by slaves. We have some collard greens here, just some regular collard greens, very small bunch. I was told by my grandmother, and I now know that it is history, that in the South, collard greens grew wild, just everywhere. But the secret that the slaves used is that they put a pinch of sugar in their greens when they cooked them. And that made them easier to eat, whether it was collard greens or turnip greens or whatever type of green they cooked, they put some sugar in it. But when the master started asking them to cook greens for them, they would not put the sugar in. And therefore, they did not, the master didn't want to eat them. But that was one of the secrets to make sure that they had plenty green vegetables to eat.
A lot of low cuts of meat. You have maws, chitlins, pig foot. It's just like all those meats, offals, the internal organs, all of that stuff. Again, it's a lot of it too is fatty food, and like fat store flavored.
Yes.
Here are some examples of some of the meats that our ancestors ate. These were the things that the master, the slave owner, threw away. And our ancestors had to learn how to take the scraps, cook them, and they did a good job, and make them palatable for us. I have some turkey neck pieces, some chitlins. Chitlins are nothing but cow guts, cow intestines. And here are some ham hocks, or the part of the feet of a pig, and here are some neck bones. Now these items are very high now, but they at one time they were just discarded. Chitlins was just out of the trash. So were pig feet, so were the neck bones, and so were turkey necks. But the slaves learned how to prepare them and make them nourishing, and I'm here today because my ancestors learned how to take what their slave owners discarded and make them palatable. And believe it or not, I can cook a mean pot of chitlins. Chitlins are good, but I don't eat everybody chitlins.
Meant about myself, about my own culture that I could play up. And that's what I really try to do with Southern Charm. Kind of try to get historical elements, elements from my own background, my own, heritage, so to speak.
In the basket now, I have large eggs, heavy whipping cream, butter, and 3 different types of cheese. These are the basic items other than macaroni that we use to make macaroni and cheese. This dish would be heavy in fat and salt. But we ate a lot of foods that were heavy in fat and salt because that's what made food taste good. And we now know that we do not need to consume a lot of salt, nor do we need to consume a lot of food that's heavy in fat.
Yeah.
When the slaves cooked macaroni and cheese, here again, they had to use um, the scrapings. They created the cheese, but when they cut the wax off the cheese, they had to cut large enough sections off so they would have enough cheese attached to that wax so they could have the cheese.
Food tradition is very important. It's very important to me. It's very important to us all. Food, the way we eat is very primitive. We choose the type of food we choose because of survival we had to develop ages ago. The colors we like, the taste we like. It's what our ancestors had to acclimate themselves in order to not poison themselves, in order to get the right nutrients that the body was craving.
Yes, most of my ability to cook come from what my grandmother has taught me, my godmother, my aunt, what my mother taught me. And they passed on what they knew. And so yes, it's history. All the good stuff we want, all the things that my grandmother taught us to make. My uncles like to tell me, well, this is good, but it doesn't taste like mama's. But traditions are, we like to keep the recipes alive and well.
Furniture, the type of music that's playing with the restaurant. When you come in the Southern Charm, you're gonna hear blues, you're gonna hear soul, you're gonna be R&B. Everything sets the background. The food is the performer. It's what's on stage. It's what people come to see. But the lighting is important. The background music, the opening act, everything is important, and that's how I treat the food presentation. That all the elements have to correlate to tell a good story, a believable story.
The food here is delicious. I'm growing up in the South. You try a lot of different people's Southern cuisine, but here it's so authentic and there's so much flavor. And I just got the meatloaf, and that's something I grew up in. I've always had meatloaf, but this meatloaf is one of the best meatloafs I've ever had. Yes, definitely. I believe the name of this restaurant is completely correct. Like, they got the Southern charm down. Like, from the aesthetic down to the food. It's all authentic. A lot of foods that I know about growing up that I learned about that were a part of slavery, that the slaves made those meals. I see a lot of those on the menus here.
My parents didn't really do too much like soul or deep South country cooking, but they did do a lot of good cooking. If I'm honest, I don't really know the history. I feel like I know its roots and have been around it a lot, but I really don't know the actual origins of history of the food.
When you say, what's American cooking? They're going to think fried chicken, You're going to think bacon. You're going to think cornbread. You're going to think mac and cheese. A lot of those, you hear those dishes named and they say American. So, African American cuisine, soul food, is ultimately the foundation that American food is based on.